So we have some news here on the Democratic platform. We have both good news and bad news about it. Bernie's committee picks did some really, really great work overall, but they didn't win on every single policy. Now, that's to be expected that they don't win on every policy, but at the same time, if you really want progressives and liberals to get involved and to hold their nose and vote for Hillary Clinton, you probably want to go all the way. So first of all, instead of Hillary Clinton's $12 minimum wage idea, which is what she argued for during the primary season, they went with Bernie Sanders' $15 minimum wage idea. That's a huge win. That shows that in some areas they're willing to make concessions. Now, the counter argument is, yeah, but it's just a platform. They could just ignore it. That's totally true. But at least you have them on paper saying, hey, this is what we're in favor of, and it's inching in the right direction. Even if they don't necessarily hold true to it, at least, you know, your rhetoric is becoming more in line with what your base actually wants. And at least it shows that when you apply pressure from the left, eventually they buckle. Now, we need to get them to buckle more, and we need to get it to be, you know, as principled as humanly possible. But as I always tell you on this show, pressure works. It may work to varying degrees in different circumstances, but pressure does work. Now, the downside to this proposal is that, or I should say this amendment in the platform, is that the $15 minimum wage is not tied to inflation. That's actually a disaster because that's like the most important part of doing a minimum wage increase and getting a reform on the minimum wage is that you tie it to inflation, because then you never have to come back and deal with this issue again, because the minimum wage will always continue to rise with inflation. So it will always be a living wage if you make it a living wage. In fact, I've told you guys before, instead of getting the $15 minimum wage and not having it tied to inflation, I would rather have the $12 minimum wage and have it tied to inflation. Because according to most economists, $12 is a living wage. And then, so if you have a living wage and you tie it to inflation, you don't have to come back and revisit it. To do 15 and not tie it to inflation, for a while, you get the living wage, but then, you know, years down the road, I don't know how many years, but 40, 50, whatever it may be, all of a sudden, boom, you got to revisit the issue again, and they're not making a living wage anymore because of inflation. It wiped out that increase. So the good news is you got 15. The bad news is it's not tied to inflation, and the not tied to inflation part really is disastrous. So then we move along here, and they also came out for abolishing the death penalty. That's huge, and that's totally because of Bernie Sanders. And they also came out for expanding Social Security. Wins across the board there. Wins across the board. So Bernie Sanders has been, you know, a lion on this issue, basically saying, hey, we kill the wrong people sometimes, so how the heck can we have the death penalty? Unless you're in favor of state-sanctioned murder of innocent people every now and then, it makes no sense to have the death penalty. Now, Hillary tried to maintain during the debating season, during the primary, oh, yes, no, I feel so bad about it, it's so horrible, it's so terrible, but we need to reserve it for certain situations. Well, Bernie's side won on that issue. And understand that expanding Social Security, that's something that, this is so clearly Bernie's influence that we know as a matter of fact it wouldn't have happened without Bernie's influence. Because honestly, he took a position here that I never even thought of. Like, every time I would come out here and defend Social Security and defend Medicaid and Medicare, I would just say, we can't cut it. That's as far as my argument would go. Bernie took it further. Bernie's like, no, why not expand it? Wouldn't that be better? And a bunch of progressives around the country went, oh, right, that's how you fight. Because if you say that, well, then what does the compromise become? The compromise becomes, I guess we leave it as is and we don't cut it. See, this is how you play politics. You shoot for the stars, you might reach the moon. Let's expand Social Security. And the Republicans say, no, let's cut it. Okay, compromise. Leave it as it is. Don't cut it. It's a brilliant political tactic. And by the way, Bernie doesn't even necessarily use it as a political tactic. Bernie says it because he wants to expand Social Security. Wildly popular government program. It has a gigantic surplus. And all the fear-mongering over it is just that, fear-mongering. So that's another great step in the right direction. Now, I got more here. The platform also calls for, quote, an updated and modernized version of Glass-Steagall. So that's good because it says the words Glass-Steagall. There may be a downside to it because it says an updated and modernized version, which, it sounds good on paper, but that could give somebody like Hillary Clinton wiggle room to say, My updated and modernized version has like 8,000 loopholes and makes it ineffectual. In the same way that Dodd-Frank, like on paper, not so bad, but then they put in so many loopholes that it's like you basically had Wall Street go back to doing the same shit they were doing beforehand. So, in the hands of somebody like Hillary Clinton and a Hillary Clinton administration, updating and modernizing Glass-Steagall is just wiggle room to get out of putting back in place Glass-Steagall. No, just do traditional Glass-Steagall. And then on top of that, if you need to do new legislation that has new efficient regulations. But there was nothing wrong with old school Glass-Steagall. Let's remember that. So now we get to the bad. And yes, the bad is very, very bad. Opposing the TPP was shot down. Naturally, you have Bernie's people saying, no, we're not going to be in favor of TPP, period. Hillary's people, Debbie Wasserman Schultz people, when it comes to trade deals, we can't be just against trade deals. That's crazy. We need to be in favor of trade deals that are great for workers and the American people. So yay, trade deals. Is anybody buying this? This is the new trick that they use, the neoliberals use. They go, oh, no, of course. You look at NAFTA, you look at all the previous trade deals. Yeah, okay, they're kind of bad, but they're bad because of the nature of those trade deals. That doesn't mean the trade deals in and of themselves are bad. Therefore, we're still in favor of trade deals. We're not crazy. We're not barbarians over here. So we're just in favor of trade deals that are good for workers. Really, you're going to trust Hillary Clinton to make those trade deals that are good for workers when there's stories about how, I think it was in Haiti, she negotiated down their minimum wage. She cares so much about workers around the world that she negotiated down the minimum wage in Haiti. We're talking about cents there. That's what the minimum wage is. She's a lion for the corporation, and she's like, no, let's lower that a little bit. So, no, we don't trust you. And when you use those, tap dancing words and that language of, we're in favor of trade deals, but they got to be smart trade deals, understand that we don't trust your judgment in what is smart and what isn't smart because you're bought off. So the language to flat out oppose the TPP was shot down. Now remember, Obama, Democratic president, in favor of the TPP. This has a lot to do with it. And by the way, Hillary Clinton, so disgusting. She goes out on Twitter and she's retweeting all the provisions of the Democratic platform that are positive. Virtually all of them were solely influenced by Bernie Sanders and his team. So they do all the hard work. They fight Hillary Clinton's cronies behind the scenes. And then when they pass, Hillary Clinton tweets it out like she's the one who birthed these ideas. Now, look, don't get me wrong. I'm happy that she's not totally being against these, even in her rhetoric. But it's just disingenuous to act like, oh, yes, this is what I've been for all along. On TPP, too. She tweets or she retweets something that says that, oh, Hillary is also against TPP. But wait a second. Bernie's people were obviously fighting to have language against the TPP in the platform. That means who opposed the language? Well, it had to be Hillary's people and Debbie Wasserman Schultz people. So your team blocks it, and then she's out there tweeting about how, oh, it's a shame that it was blocked. Your fucking people blocked it. What are you talking about? God, it's so fucking slimy, man. It's so slimy. And then also we have a national freeze on fracking was slapped down. Gee, I wonder why. Hillary Clinton, as Secretary of State, pushed fracking all around the world. So this is another reason why she's a neoliberal and she's a corporatist Democrat, and this is why the progressive base does not trust her, and they're right to not trust her. A carbon tax was slapped down, and single-payer healthcare was slapped down. That hurts, man. That hurts. We got a Democratic Party that is a shadow of its former self. And remember, guys, Bernie's team fought like crazy on all these different individual provisions. And it was Debbie Wasserman Schultz people and Hillary Clinton's people that were like, man, that one, I don't know about that. Hillary's position on healthcare never made sense because she says all the time, well, look, I like Obamacare. So what we need to do is add on to Obamacare. What would be the next logical step from Obamacare if you want to add on to Obamacare, this vague thing that's not specific at all and doesn't give any policy details? Let's add on to it. Okay, well, what's the next step from Obamacare? Public option. The public option, that's it. So, okay, that's moving to a more progressive position. But then when you say, hey, do you want to do that? No, I don't know about that. So then what do you mean add on? And by the way, what's the end goal to an add-on from Obamacare? You go from Obamacare to public option to single payer. So single payer is the end-all be-all. That's always been the position, the true progressive liberal democratic position for the longest time, a national healthcare system like every other modern nation has. but she attacks Bernie for being in favor of a single-payer system as she pretends like she wants to add on to Obamacare to eventually get to a single-payer system. And then her cronies and her puppets in the platform process, they just shoot it down. No, single-payer? Not interested. Okay, well then just call it what it is. You're taking the position that Republicans used to take. There was a time when Hillary was in favor of single-payer. Then she took so much money from the health industry, and look at that, now she's not in favor of single-payer anymore. This is one of those clear examples where it's like, the corruption and the bribery is right in your face. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it, just like the bankruptcy bill, where she flipped on the bankruptcy bill that helps corporations. So Bernie's people fighting like crazy for it, and it gets slapped down by Hillary Clinton. You wonder why, 50%, 55% of Bernie's people say, I don't think I'm going to vote for Hillary Clinton. It's because of shit like this. And Bernie is 100% right when he says, even if I tell them, hey, you got to vote for her, that's not, that. Like what? Are they just going to shut off their brains and go, oh, my political daddy told me to do this and that? No, they're going to go, I don't know about that, man. I don't know about that. So it's up to her to bring them in and to make a good faith effort to say, I'm going to be significantly better than Donald Trump in all these different ways. And by the way, you have to do that in a way that's honest, too. You can't do it in a way that's like I was just describing, how you, in a sleazy way, retweet the provisions that Bernie's people got. Because that's just disingenuous. We know that you weren't the one who was pushing for it. So you'd have to go out there to really get progressives. You'd have to go out there and admit your previous mistakes and call them mistakes. As of right now, there's no evidence that she actually thinks these things are mistakes. All her terrible, terrible, terrible votes, supporting NAFTA, supporting deregulation, voting for the Patriot Act. On the Iraq War, she apologizes, but you get the sense she's just doing it for political reasons. If she came out and she gave a speech where she outlined all the shitty parts about her past, and she said, here's how I want to move forward, and here's how I want to be better, and still here's where my differences are with Bernie Sanders, well, we can respect that. But it never comes across like that. And it's always the case that within the Democratic Party, her forces are the forces to drag us back and to give us more shitty neoliberal Republican-like policies. And Bernie's people are the people who are actually fighting for what are the traditional Democratic positions. This isn't a lot to ask for. This isn't crazy. And if you oppose this, well, just keep it real and call it what it is. You're just not as liberal, you're not as progressive, and you're comfortable being a center-right Democrat.